Is there going to be another?
Yeah, it's going to be another.
All right, all right, all right. This brings us up to 2018 and to the biggest commercial success of the year, but more importantly, a movie that has totally changed the dynamics of the industry and has provoked kinds of conversations that we've never had in this business, and that is Black Panther. How did you first find out that there was such a project in the works, and was that particularly exciting to you? Were you somebody, even before anyone was coming to you about this, who cared about the character or the comic books or anything to do with Black Panther?
Yeah, I was a big comic book nerd. I'm a comic guy for sure. So when, I want to say right after Fantastic Four came out, you know, Marvel is very secretive. I mean, they're like locked down with everything they got going on. And I remember meeting with Nate Moore and the Russo brothers, about this character, and it was like, you know, character, you know, in one of the Avenger movies. And in my head, it was like, it's gotta be Black Panther. It's like, what other role could it be? Like, that's worth, like, you know, having that kind of, you know, that introductory role that's gonna eventually turn into their own spinoff and their own, you know, their own franchise. And I was, and I went in for it. And they ultimately told me I was, you know, too young for the role at the time, or they felt I was too young, and it, you know, ended up being the Falcon. It was Anthony Mackie. And I was like, cool. I said, all right, cool. I still got a shot. And I was like, all right, that, you know, Black Panther is still out there, and then that's when Chadwick got cast, and I was like, okay, cool, perfect. You know, like I said, congratulations, it was amazing, great. You know, Chad killed it. He was phenomenal. It was like I couldn't really see anybody else for that role after I actually saw his performance. I was like, man, like that, like he's perfect.
The performance in the prior Marvel Avengers,
before Black Panther,
right,
for sure.
Right,
yeah,
right.
And I was like, okay, this take on this role is spot on. Like they know what they're doing. So all right, I kind of chalked it up as an L. I was like, cool, great. And then Ryan calls me up, as Ryan does, and is like, "Hey, this is role. You know, he's the villain. He's the bad guy in Black Panther. You know, I think you should play. I think it'd be a good look for you. You know what I'm saying? If you play this role." I was like, "Cool, let's go." And that was really it. That's all he had to do. He just called me in and asked me about it, and I was like, sure. And then we filled in all the blanks about everything.
How many other directors could call you up, not tell you much about a part, and get a yes right away?
Nah, he's the only one.
He's the only one, right?
He's the only one. He's the only one. It's a level of trust. You know, I know he's very calculated. He doesn't do anything that, you know, he doesn't have his heart into, that he's not going to see through from the first step to the end. That was a no-brainer. And then we started talking about, you know, going in depth about the character, you know, what that conversation was going to be like, you know, hairstyles, wardrobe, the whole thing. You know, we started trying to, you know, figure out, you know, what was you know, because the comic books, Killmonger has like, you know, crazy long locks, and I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do the whole Fabio thing, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really big on wigs. I want to like, can I grow my hair out? And so I needed time, so they gave me time to like grow my hair as long as I could. So I grew it for about a year and some change, and yeah, man, and yeah, we
well, how about when you guys were talking about the psychology of this character?
Yeah.
Nobody thinks, or very few people go about life thinking they're a bad guy. So they think what they're doing is, you know, they have their reasons. And I know that for you, playing this guy, even though in some ways you could reductively say he's the antagonist or whatever, but he has his reasons for doing what he does, right? You had to kind of establish all that in your own mind.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like, you know, from understanding, you know, the African diaspora and being a part of that and having a conversation that's never really been had on film before, you know, what it means to be African. You know, what that question of identity, what does that mean? It's a question that Ryan was trying to answer through this movie. There's a question that came up a lot as we're working, you know, through scenes and, you know, having conversation with the other actors and really building these characters. And for myself, you know, at the time had been to the motherland on Chronicle, had been there, and how that changed my life. But a lot of African Americans never, only knowing about Africa what was told to them or what they learned in school or history books. That's not really an honest depiction of what it's like. Or having my parents or or older figures kind of tell me what that experience would be like, but they've never been there either. So it's similar to like kind of Eric in a way where he was told stories of Wakanda, he was told stories of his history and his heritage, but nobody really, there was nothing to reinforce that. He's never been, it was a fairy tale to him. And kind of getting into that mind state of, growing up in systemic oppression, what your environment could do to you, being stripped of your identity and freedoms and being oppressed, what that buildup would do to a person, to a group of people over a period of time. Killmonger was the exaggerated version of that. He was that outlet for that African American kind of perspective. And I got a chance to be that voice, and I took that very seriously. And for me, Chadwick was, T'Challa was the flip side of that. Grew up in, a safe place, knew who he was, knew his heritage, knew his culture, was brought up in royalty and kind of championed to be this person. And you can see how somebody with those resources, that environment, what could happen, who you can become. And we wanted to bridge the gap that they're not that different. African and African American, we were taught that it's this huge gap and that we're not that alike, to disenfranchisement. But we're very similar. And I think this film started a conversation between young people that that's going to continue to happen, and it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to build us together, and we're going to see what happens in a few years. So, for us, it was a conversation that needed to be had, and it was a conversation I didn't even know I needed until we had it. So yeah, it was a very important project and process for me.
And when you guys. Talk about the vibe, the feeling on the set. I think a lot of it was shot in Atlanta, but just how often, I can't imagine there's too many other sets that had the demographic breakdown of this one, and in terms of who's just around doing in front of and behind the screen jobs. And then also whether, what sense of responsibility you guys felt, maybe pressure even, because there had not really been a movie like this. We should just remind people that this is the first, Marvel movie with a black protagonist and antagonist at the center, something that people hadn't seen. They'd seen superheroes like the one that we referenced earlier that you played, but this was different.
Yeah, no, this was I think on set it was a very proud feeling. We shot in Atlanta. We're all of Marvel films shoot at, but being in Atlanta, with a lot of the crew, a lot of black and brown faces on the crew, like I said, showing up to, to work every day, being on these traditional African sets, it was like our Star Wars, what I'm saying? It was that place where we felt like we can dream and imagine and play make-believe, but also be rooted and grounded in our culture. It felt really good. And the pressure we felt, when you're in a vacuum, when you're on set and you're going to set every day, you don't think about the outside pressure as much. We knew going into it that this is the first time that this group of people are getting the resources that we have, on this platform. We knew we couldn't mess it up, because if we messed it up, then it probably, who knows when the next one was going to come back around. So we had that looming, every once in a while. But when we got to work, you know, it was about winning the day. You know, it was about showing up every day and giving 110%, leaving everything on set, and being honest with our work, and following Ryan and you know, Nate Moore and Kevin Feige, you know, and everybody over at Marvel who got behind the vision, that got behind Ryan's, his leadership. They let him make the movie he needed to make, and when you have Marvel, you know, and Disney backing that message, you know, arguably the biggest studio in the world, it sets a precedence. You know, it sets the example, and it also lets people's defenses down a little bit. I think going into it, I think a lot of people didn't know what to expect. And of course, it's, you know, you see Marvel, you know, you see that Marvel thing, you see the comic book pages flip up. It's like, okay, we're about to go in and watch a superhero movie. And I think it allowed people to get something from the film and take something and be open to something that maybe they might not have been if it wasn't a Marvel film. Right. You know, I don't think maybe they wouldn't have sat down. Maybe they
that gets them in the door.
Yeah. It gets in the door. So I think it was the perfect project to really start the shift.
Tell me about opening weekend. First let me give some numbers. This is one of the top 10 opening weekends ever. Stayed at #1 at the box office for 6 weeks. Eventually grossed $700 million domestically, making it the year's top grosser. $1.3 billion worldwide, behind only Avengers: Infinity War. That is quite a statement.
Yeah, that's a statement, man. It is. I mean, and honestly, you know, we thought we were going to do something special because we had all the ingredients to do something special. You never could guess that. You never could predict the numbers that kind of, the people that came out in droves, the churches, you know, the pastors who talked about it on Sunday, the mentors, and, you know, that took the Boys and Girls Club and the youth centers and that got everybody out to see this movie 2, 3, 4 times in the theater. Like, that's what made the difference, you know, and I feel like everybody around the world felt connected to this project. You know, I think they felt a sense of pride, to be proud of where they come from, you know, their own identity, no matter where you come from, you know, to take that seriously and own it, you know. So I think everybody felt accessible to this movie, particularly, you know, African Americans. So it was, and I don't think I realized representation, how powerful it was. I don't think I realized the impact of it until this movie, you know. And
when did it hit you? What made it sink in?
I think it still does. Yeah. You know, I think it's something that comes in waves. It's from the Halloween. I mean, it's something so simple and so small, and people may overlook. But, you know, seeing these little kids with, you know, permanent marker beards, Killmonger beards, and like, you know, these, you know, I remember hearing stories about like moms telling me that, you know, oh, my daughter asked me to shave her hair for Halloween. It was like, no, baby, you can't shave your hair, but, you know, we're gonna, you know, put this, you know, bald cap on you, and just they felt a sense of pride to see themselves on screen in a way that they didn't have to imagine that hard. They didn't have to imagine this, you know, to see themselves, because, you know, I watch, you know, everything, you know, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter's, you know, Narnia, all these movies that are so fantastical, Star Wars, all that good stuff. But, you know, and I never had any trouble pretending to be any of those characters, right. You know. But when you see yourself up there, you have no trouble whatsoever.
Right.
It's like, that's what it is. So I think giving these kids the ability to dream, I think it's really important. Like, you got to dream. You got to be able to see it. You know, daydream as much as possible. I think that was, you know, that was really important. And then also on the behind the camera, right. You know, giving opportunities to, you know, set designers and, you know, costume designers and, you know, writers and sound mixers, and, you know, there's so many avenues and so many different lanes that I think a lot of people didn't know was an opportunity. They didn't know that was available to them. So now we're inspiring a new batch of artists across the board, in front of the camera and behind the camera. So, you know, 5, 10 years from now, because everything takes time. Everybody wants things now, but things have to happen, you know, over time. And I think that once, you know, the 14-year-old, the freshman in high school right now that sees this, that gets an idea, or even before that, they're going to start to focus on that path a lot earlier, you know, than they would have, than maybe when they get into their early 20s or late 20s and they're trying to figure out what it is. But man, if they would have started 10 years ago with that dream, you know, imagining and seeing it, maybe look how, you know, imagine how far, you know, along they would have been at that point. So I think we're just, you know, everything's going to happen in its right time, and I think we're starting the conversation, and I think this movie really did a lot to shift the needle.
Absolutely. Let's take. We're going to take a look now at
There's more?
2 scenes
What do I got?
from Black Panther.